It's week 12, day 80 of my full-time chronic pain rehabilitation journey. My name's Jason, and today I'm going to talk about an essential skill, learning how to sit with your own shit. I don't like to swear, but sometimes that's the only way to accurately describe what's floating around in many of our minds. First though, a quick status update. It's been a rough 2 weeks. I am detoxing from my sleep medications, so I am sleep deprived. Add on to that the fact that my physical therapist is deliberately inflicting pain upon me, and it's quite the mix. I'm struggling quite a bit. But what's new? The timing of the two together is probably not the best idea in the world, but it's already playing out, and so I have to see it through. The reason my physical therapist is deliberately inflicting pain upon me is because it's time to mobilize the part of my back that has been essentially immobile for 20 years. The injury is 30 years old, but it's been at least stuck for 20, and now it's time to try to unstick it. There's no guarantee that this new technique is going to work. I may end up simply in more pain, but we won't know unless we try. Today's tip is to just show up. I was so tired at the physical therapist this morning, I kept falling asleep. During traction, I fell asleep. While they were dry needling me, I fell asleep. And at the end of that session, I was convinced that I had every right to go home, and that I could simply text my personal trainer and say, you know what, I'm not feeling up to it, I'm going home and going to bed. I let that play out in my head, dealt with the emotions, and then when I went to my car, instead of turning right to go home, I turned left and I went to the gym. And I'm really grateful that I did, because I had a very powerful experience with my personal trainer. I've been sharing things with him about my journey. As it turns out, one of them helped him with his children. And he shared a very touching moment with me, and we connected in a very personal and powerful way. And my training went well today, so I'm really grateful that I went to the gym instead of going home. All right, today's topic, how to sit with your SHIT. So what brought this up for me, this topic, and why I think I need to talk about it right now, is there are 3 events that have happened recently that I think demonstrate the need for this skill. And the inability to do this, I think, has pretty disastrous consequences, or can at least potentially have disastrous consequences. The first was my brother-in-law relapsed. We could tell he was struggling. We didn't know how bad it had gone, but apparently he started using some substances again, and he is now back in rehab again. The other is we took a trip to Idaho, and on that trip I ran out of steam, and I felt like giving up on the trip as well as my entire journey. That was difficult. And yesterday it was my son's 16th birthday. We went to a fun place called Boondocks, and halfway through the pain flared up again. When I got home, I not only felt like quitting my chronic pain rehabilitation journey, I was convinced that all of my efforts would fail, that I would end up back in my job in more pain, and eventually be fired and left essentially destitute and unable to care for my family. That was some tough stuff to sit with. Now, I bring these up because I did sit with them. Not necessarily well. I had to kind of ride the wave and let it pass. It was very difficult, but I did sit with them. And I believe what I was sitting with is something akin to what my brother-in-law had to sit with before he relapsed. I'm not comparing the two. His may be like 10 times or 100 times worse than anything I've ever experienced. I can't really know that, but I believe they're at least similar, at least in theory. So if I can learn to sit with mine, I would like to be able to help him learn to sit with his, which is why I'm making this video, and to remind myself the next time I have to sit in my own that I can do it because I've already done it. So the first thing you have to do is identify what is so scary. What is it that you can't handle feeling? What drives you nuts? And I believe that there is something or some things that are afflicting my brother-in-law in such a way that he feels like he cannot handle them. He is detoxed, he wasn't using, so it couldn't have been withdrawal symptoms. There's something else that's driving him back to use. He has to figure out what that is so that he can learn to sit with it. If you can't name it or can't describe it, it's going to have tons of power over you. What's so scary for me? Well, I've already described it. I'm afraid that I will not be able to sustain employment, take care of my family, that I will end up essentially a destitute failure. I'll have failed in my primary male responsibility, which is to provide for my family, and I will lose the respect not only of them, but of everyone else around me, and leave this world in a state of disgrace. It's kind of heavy. It sucks. And when I feel it, it feels completely real. It feels like it's going to happen. It feels like it's actually the future. But as we know, human beings suck at predicting the future. Hence, I'm a bad prophet, and I know that now. And so every time I have this ability or this tendency to want to predict the future, I do eventually remind myself that I don't know jack. The skill that you need to learn to be able to sit with your SHIT is simple. Don't try to escape it. Embrace it. Feel it fully. Let it pass over you. It will not kill you, and it will not last forever. If you try to escape, you can identify pretty quickly that you are, because you're probably seeking distraction or some kind of pleasure to dull whatever it is that you're feeling. Things like media, can you say Netflix, food, drugs, or sex. One of those is internet porn. Any of these things may temporarily dull and evade the feelings that you cannot face or you feel you cannot face, but eventually you will have to face them. So why not skip the escape step and just embrace them altogether? Now, I have a couple of tips that can help you get through sitting with your difficult SHIT. And the first of those is do not sit alone. I aspire to someday be able to sit with my own SHIT by myself and deal with it. But I find that it helps to have someone else there with me. It can be a loved one, a spouse, a friend, whoever, I don't care. But find somebody to sit with you through it. For me, I typically cuddle with my wife and hold her and talk to her. It works, and so I do it. And I'm grateful that I have her to help me through. The next tip is that the discomfort will not last forever. You'll have to remind yourself of this over and over again. These feelings will pass. They will, in time, dissipate. They're not going to stay forever. And even though it feels like you can't bear them, you can bear them because you're already bearing them, and eventually you won't have to bear them. They do pass. Fighting for your life means learning to embrace intolerable feelings. Rather than escape, you must learn to expect them, embrace them, and enlist others in your fight. If you find my videos helpful, please pass them along and don't forget to subscribe. Until next time, keep fighting for your life.